John Solomon, he has been an investigative reporter. He's with The Hill. Gregg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, and, of course, the seller of the #1 book, The Russia Hoax. Thank you all for being with us. John, I want to also put this in context for people because it gets complicated. We got to first start with the timeline. The timeline is May of 2017. Well, that's when Robert Mueller is getting appointed by Rod Rosenstein. Just before that, we had people like Lisa Page and Peter Strzok talking about a media leak strategy that had to do with the dossier. Well, it now appears that was all being leaked for the purposes, and again, all it was the dossier recycled in different news outlets for the purpose of initiating the special counsel so it would get appointed. Now we're discovering that they're even talking about surreptitiously taping the President of the United States so that they can remove him from office. This sounds like a coup to me.
Well, there's one other event that occurs in that May time frame that really, I think, is the shockwave for this conversation, and that was the termination of James Comey. Comey's the FBI director that allowed all this Russia investigation to go on. And we know now from Lisa Page's testimony that in May they still had no evidence against Trump proving any form of collusion with Russia. So they've been 9 months at it. James Comey's let this go on for 9 months. He's let two agents who have an anti-Trump bias lead that investigation. He gets fired. And what's the natural reaction of all those who've been supporting James Comey, that being Rosenstein, McCabe, and Strzok and Page? It's, hey, maybe we can remove this guy through other means. If we can't prove that he did something wrong with Russia, maybe we can prove he's incompetent, and we'll record him and maybe try to take him out through the recording in the 25th Amendment. This is not what the FBI was brought in to do. I'm sure Greg could talk about the history, and his book lays out the real possibility that this was a soft coup, right? Look at this. We have the FBI. They're not investigating a crime here. In fact, they can't find a crime by Lisa Page's own testimony.
Lisa Page's testimony, just to be clear, she said they had found nothing in 9 months leading up to this point.
That's right. So they switched gears, right? Maybe we can remove them through other means. And this conversation is so extraordinary because this isn't the job of the FBI. The 25th Amendment never envisioned the FBI being involved in it. So you've got the FBI and the Deputy Attorney General allegedly have a conversation. He says it's a joke. They say they're dead serious about it, and they believe he was dead serious about it. And no matter which way it comes down, it's just another example of how far down the road the FBI was beyond its core mission, which is to investigate crimes and stop counterintelligence and
again, this has nothing to do with rank-and-file agents at all. This is just a group of rogue, power-hungry, upper-echelon management types, and if anything, they took the cases away from the field offices purposely so that they can involve themselves in these nefarious activities. That's why it really does explain, Gregg Jarrett, why every FBI guy I know is so angry about this, because they know it was ripped out of their hands. And all of them say that if this was them, they know they'd get fired.
That's right. And in fact, I interviewed former top officials at the FBI who are angry at people like James Comey, Andrew McCabe, James Baker, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok for ruining the reputation, the good name of the FBI. I wrote a column recently that said Rosenstein's actions in an attempt to depose the sitting president of the United States is the equivalent of an attempted coup. Not a bloody, violent coup, what's known, and John referred to it a moment ago, as a soft coup. Using and misusing their power and the law to remove a sitting president. And so here we now have not just James Baker, who was told this was serious, but the people in the conversation with Rosenstein, who are Andrew McCabe and Lisa Page, who said he was dead serious. Recruit people to invoke the 25th Amendment and secretly record the president to gather evidence in support of it. Rosenstein, whenever he gets caught engaging in wrongdoing, claims, I was misunderstood. He threatened the Intelligence Committee staff members in January, first denied it, then admitted it, but said, I was misunderstood. He threatened Devin Nunes and said, I was misunderstood. And now, in his attempted coup of the president, the evidence indicates, he is saying, I was misunderstood. My words were misinterpreted. It was just sarcasm. There is a pattern of conduct here on the part of this man, Rod Rosenstein. Why hasn't the president fired him, even though Rosenstein richly deserves it? Politics. The president recognizes the fallout just before an election, and so I suspect Rosenstein's days are numbered after the election.
So now we've got 3 top FBI officials involved in this, all pointing the finger at Rod Rosenstein, wanting to be part of an effort to take out President Trump, saying that this effort to or mention of taping the president was real. Now, the president met with Rod Rosenstein yesterday, and we don't have any account, really, of what went on when they talked on Air Force One, except the president saying we had a good meeting. All right, we're going to do this for the full hour here. There's just way too much to literally unfold and unwrap here, because this is massive news. We're talking about top officials now. Basically, he's trying to set up a duly elected president, something we've always known. Now we have the evidence to prove it, and now we have some of the players now turning on each other and telling the truth against each other. All right, 25 now till the top of the hour. Write down our toll-free telephone number. It's 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. 2 big breaking developments as it relates to the biggest abuse of power scandal in American history. One has to do with the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Remember, he recommended the firing of Comey. Number 2, he was the one that recommended the special counsel, Robert Mueller. Number 3, he's also the guy that signed the 4th final FISA warrant. In other words, the 3rd renewal application on Carter Page, a Trump campaign associate. Well, now we have information corroborated and confirmed by 3 separate high-ranking FBI DOJ sources, including James Baker, who is resigned, and Lisa Page and Andrew McCabe, that is now under criminal investigation, all corroborating that Rod Rosenstein himself was discussing wearing a wire to secretly record conversations with President Trump in the hopes he'd say something that they could use and then invoke the 25th Amendment and remove him from power. Andrew McCabe telling that and confirming that, along with Lisa Page, and going to the office of the general counsel, James Baker. He's corroborating all of this, and they're saying that Baker had said it, Baker had heard about it, and the other 2 actually took notes about it at the time. The other story that we're following is a pretty stunning revelation, and since it directly contradicts what the Justice Department and the FBI officials have said in sworn testimony, but James Baker also telling Congress last week, remember the law firm Perkins Coie? That's where Hillary's campaign, that's where the DNC funneled money. So it would look like a legal expense, when in fact it was anything but. And then they hired Fusion GPS, an op research firm, that went out and got a hired gun by the name of Christopher Steele. And he used his Russian sources to put together a series of papers. They become known as the dossier. The same dossier that was never corroborated or verified, but used as a FISA warrant application, the bulk of information to get a FISA warrant to spy on a Trump campaign associate. And it gets worse than that. It was used, even though this information was not corroborated, it was disseminated at all levels of government to propagandize and lie to the American people in the lead up to a campaign. And then it was used, we're now understanding, to bludgeon then President Donald Trump and to try and get him removed from office, and creating a phony Russia-Trump narrative that never, ever had any evidence whatsoever. Anyway, we found out that, in the case of Perkins Coie, the lawyer's a guy by the name of Michael Sussman, directly handing documents, Baker told Congress, Michael Sussman handing to Baker documents about Russia's attempts at meddling in the 2016 election. In other words, he was a cutout, a go-between for Hillary Clinton. The FBI knew he was a go-between in this particular instance. Now, the question is, why did the FBI, knowing all of this, not stop it? Why did they then lie about it? In effect, the application for the FISA warrant wiretap on the Trump campaign was done at the direction of a political opponent, Hillary Clinton, and that's entirely illegal for both the FBI, Department of Justice, and Clinton herself. And you have numerous officials at the DOJ and the FBI have sworn under oath that nobody at the FBI or DOJ knew anything about the Democratic Party being behind the Clinton dirt. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes saying on Sunday, now you have one of the top lawyers for the Democrats and the Clinton campaign who is feeding information directly to the top lawyer at the FBI. So it appears the FBI and the Justice Department were all doing the Clinton campaign's bidding in applying for FISA warrants and permission to snoop on the Trump campaign communications. John Solomon and Gregg Jarrett continue with us. Anything I'm saying here that is wrong, Gregg Jarrett?
You got it 100% correct. There was never any Trump-Russia collusion. The FBI and the DOJ knew it. There was Hillary Clinton-Russian collusion. Two people are on her payroll, the British spy Christopher Steele, who composes a totally fabricated, phony document based on supposed Russian sources and providing it to the FBI and the DOJ so they can launch the investigation and spy on the Trump campaign. And now a second person on the Hillary Clinton payroll, Michael Sussman, who is passing along computer storage data as well as documents to the FBI. And so this was the Hillary-Russia connection and conspiracy to use phony opposition research to defeat her political opponent. When that failed, they doubled down and they continued to spy on an associate of the Trump campaign and to launch a special counsel, Bob Mueller, to drive Trump from office. Why haven't Andrew McCabe's memos evidencing this soft coup attempt by Rod Rosenstein being given to Congress? They've been given to, of all people, Robert Mueller. Rosenstein is Mueller's boss. If Mueller is going to be investigating Rosenstein for illegal, illicit activity,
he can't
how
be
is
the boss.
he still the boss in this case? And the timing of this tells us everything. This was revenge for the firing of James Comey. This is part of the illicit scheme to frame Donald Trump.
Good title for a book. I guess that's why it's number one. John Solomon, I want you to weigh in on this, and I'm sure I'm missing some details here, but I'm giving the best summary I can. It sounds complicated, but it's not.
It's really not complicated, and Greg does such a good job of cutting through all the bluster and BS in Washington and get right down to the point. The FBI and the Justice Department were misused for a political opposition research project to stop Donald Trump from becoming president, and when that failed, they sustained an investigation that was designed to hamper his early presidency, and that's what the overwhelming evidence now shows. And there's another important part that Baker divulges in the middle of my story, but I want to point this out because many times I've heard you and I've heard Greg say that media has been complicit in this. Well, Baker gave us an unbelievable anecdote of complicity. In November, right after the election, right after Trump wins, the reporter, David Korn of Mother Jones, gives a new version of the dossier, a copy that's different from the one the FBI has from Steele, and gives it to Baker, and then Baker turns it on to the counterintelligence people. Why is that important? First off, it's not a job of a reporter to be giving evidence to the FBI. We're supposed to report facts, not become snitches. But more importantly, the timing of it is so important. The FBI just fired Christopher Steele for leaking the existence of the investigation and all that dirt he had on Trump just before the election. He gets fired. They tell the FISA court they're no longer using him, and here becomes a backdoor. A journalist becomes a backdoor to continue to receive information for Christopher Steele. This is not how the FISA process is supposed to work, and I think it's another key revelation. I think Baker's given us several key revelations. One that challenges the credibility of Rosenstein, one that shows the media being complicit in the effort to unseat Trump, and three, the direct involvement of the Democratic National Committee's lawyer in turning over evidence, pressuring the FBI. Think of what happened in that time frame. Christopher Steele, July 5th, 2016, walks into the FBI in Europe. He gets turned down. They don't act on him right away. They're not excited about it. A few days later, he goes to Bruce Orr, the number 4 official in the Justice Department. Bruce Orr puts pressure on the FBI department by reaching out and doing it. A month later, you've got the DNC's lawyer coming into the FBI again, putting pressure onto the system. There was an enormous amount of political pressure to get the FBI to find something on Trump before Election Day. And I think when we look back at this, we should all be alarmed. Take Donald Trump out of this. Any candidate, any American who had been treated this way, it really raises civil liberty concerns. It really raises abuse of power concerns, and we should all be concerned by the body of evidence that now affirms what Gregg Jarrett has written in his book.
It is so scary that when you put it all together, and now the pieces seem to be for those that put puzzles together, usually start on the outside, and you get all the square parts on the outside, and then you start filling in the pieces of the puzzle. Then the next thing you have a tree, then you have the grass, then you have the sun, And slowly but surely, it seems like we now understand a lot more, and that is that we had a group of people that literally set up an entire phony Russia investigation, the very people that exonerated Hillary long before they investigated her, the very people that literally signed off on warrants that are based on information she had provided by committing fraud to FISA courts, and the very same people that after they lost had an insurance policy, and now we know what the insurance policy is. By any means necessary, we're going to get Donald Trump, and the way we're going to do it is we're going to secretly record him, and we're going to surreptitiously get him to say something that we think we could use against him on top of a phony investigation that they initiated through a media release strategy, again, of the dossier.
You know, one of the things that really tipped me off, that there was a plot to frame Donald Trump, again, the title of my book, is I went through meticulously the FBI guidelines and the Department of Justice regulations on when and how you can launch a counterintelligence investigation of an American citizen. And what I discovered is that the FBI violated every single solitary provision of their own guidelines. They had no credible evidence of crimes, no plausible intelligence to justify a counterintelligence probe. Importantly, they had no probable cause. And yet, on July 31st, 2016, they officially launched this investigation. Peter Strzok signed the papers. He had just finished meeting with Christopher Steele. And in fact, the same day that James Comey cleared Hillary Clinton, twisting the law and contorting the facts, his FBI was meeting for the first time in Europe in a building with Christopher Steele, who had composed this phony dossier that the FBI was never able to verify. And yet they ran with this dilating investigation to damage Trump. And then they violated other federal regulations that say you may never use unverified information to gain a FISA wiretap warrant on an American citizen, and they never had it verified. Rosenstein signed off on the final renewal application, and he had no new evidence, no verified evidence. It all goes
back to the dossier. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back more with Gregg Jarrett, John Solomon. All right, as we continue, John Solomon of The Hill, investigative reporter. Gregg Jarrett, #1 New York Times bestselling author, The Russian Hoax. The phony Russia investigation was based on her unverified, uncorroborated, bought and paid for dossier. All the media leak strategy to destroy Trump before the election. Oh, hookers in a bed, urinating in the Ritz in Moscow. And then literally leaking it strategically to get the special counsel, using the same source of information, but making it appear like there are numerous sources here. So they're all saying the same thing, so creating enough smoke so that there would be fire. And all the FBI guys, they all knew it wasn't true from the beginning. Lisa Page even testified to that fact.
That's right. I mean, you cannot use double, triple, quadruple hearsay from anonymous sources to launch a counterintelligence investigation. That is strictly prohibited. Yet, Sean, that is exactly what the FBI and the DOJ did.
And John?
Greg's exactly right. There's a guy that testified a few weeks ago that didn't get a lot of attention because he's a nondescript guy, but his name is Bill Priestap. He was Pete Strzok's boss. He was the chief of counterintelligence at the FBI. He told the congressional committee that at the time they were submitting the FISA and using that information from Christopher Steele's dossier, they had just begun vetting it. They hadn't been, and yet the standard for the FISA is it must be substantiated before you can submit it to the court. Gregg has it exactly right. They hadn't even begun the substantiation process, and yet they're using it and presenting it as substantiated, verified to the court. When you look at this, but
that's the point. They willingly lied before a FISA court and lied in a FISA court application, and they also purposely withheld key information, like the fact that Hillary paid for it. How much of these are crimes here?
Oh, just the FISA alone is deprivation of rights under color of law. It's known as abuse of power. It's also perjury because they signed off on it under penalties of perjury. It's obstruction of justice. It is also conspiracy to defraud the government. The FISA court is in existence because of a congressional
when are we going to get all
act.
these FISA applications, John, that the president said he wanted declassified and unredacted? When are we going to get the warrants? When are we going to get the 302s? We know that Bruce Orr was working with Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele is trying to pass on information about his phony lying dossier to even Robert Mueller, for crying out loud.
Right. That's right. Listen, the President of the United States is listening to the Justice Department, right, and the FBI, who said, hey, there might be some problems here. We don't really want you to do this. He should keep in mind this is the Justice Department that hid from the American public and the court for more than 18 months the fact that Hillary Clinton paid for the main evidence used to open an investigation of the Trump campaign.
I got to leave it right there. John Solomon, great work. We'll have you on Hannity tonight. Gregg Jarrett, we'll see you on Hannity tonight.